Question 1. When evaluating the process for obtaining a driver's license in West Virginia, which approach best ensures an applicant demonstrates the necessary competency and adherence to state regulations for safe operation of a motor vehicle? Option A. Practicing driving only in familiar, low-traffic areas and relying on personal experience rather than the specific guidance provided in the West Virginia Driver's Handbook. Option B. Focusing primarily on memorizing answers for the written knowledge test, assuming that practical driving skills will be acquired naturally after obtaining the license. Option C. Seeking out shortcuts or informal methods to bypass certain aspects of the examination process, believing that the official requirements are overly burdensome. Option D. Thoroughly studying the official West Virginia Driver's Handbook and diligently practicing all required driving maneuvers and traffic law adherence for both the written and road tests. The correct answer is D. Thoroughly studying the official West Virginia Driver's Handbook and diligently practicing all required driving maneuvers and traffic law adherence for both the written and road tests. Explanation. When evaluating the process of obtaining a driver's license in West Virginia, understanding the procedural requirements and the underlying principles of safe operation is paramount. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate not only knowledge of traffic laws, but also the practical ability to operate a vehicle safely and responsibly, adhering to West Virginia's specific licensing regulations. The Department of Motor Vehicles, DMV, has established a structured process to ensure that only competent individuals are granted driving privileges, thereby protecting public safety. The correct approach involves thoroughly understanding and preparing for all components of the West Virginia driver's license examination, including the written knowledge test and the practical road test. This means studying the official West Virginia Driver's Handbook, which outlines traffic laws, road signs, and safe driving practices specific to the state. It also entails practicing driving maneuvers and adhering to all traffic regulations during the road test. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with West Virginia Code Section 17B2-1, which mandates that applicants must pass both a written examination and a driving test to demonstrate their competency and knowledge of traffic laws and safe operation of a motor vehicle. Adhering to these requirements ensures the applicant meets the legal standard for licensure and contributes to road safety. An incorrect approach would be to focus solely on passing the written test without adequate preparation for the practical driving skills. This is professionally unacceptable because it neglects the critical aspect of safe vehicle operation, which is a primary objective of the road test mandated by West Virginia law. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to game the system by memorizing answers for the written test without understanding the underlying principles, or by practicing only in a controlled environment without experiencing diverse road conditions. This fails to demonstrate the comprehensive competency required by the West Virginia DMV and poses a risk to public safety. Finally, an approach that involves misrepresenting one's driving experience or knowledge to expedite the process is ethically and legally unsound, violating the integrity of the licensing system. Professionals should approach this situation by prioritizing a comprehensive understanding of the West Virginia driver's licensing requirements. This involves a systematic study of the official handbook, dedicated practice of driving skills in various conditions, and a commitment to demonstrating genuine competency rather than simply fulfilling procedural steps. The decision-making framework should be guided by the principle of public safety and adherence to the legal mandates set forth by the West Virginia legislature and enforced by the DMV. Question 2. The analysis reveals that a new driver in West Virginia is preparing for their driver's license road test and has been reviewing various study materials. To optimize their preparation and ensure they meet the West Virginia DMV standards for safe driving, which of the following study and practice strategies would be most effective? Option A. Relying on general driving tips shared by experienced friends and family members. Option B. Practicing driving exclusively in quiet residential neighborhoods to build confidence. Option C. Thoroughly reviewing the official West Virginia Driver's Handbook and engaging in extensive supervised practice sessions that simulate various real-world driving conditions encountered in West Virginia. Option D. Memorizing the visual appearance of all traffic signs and signals without focusing on the specific rules associated with each. The correct answer is C. Thoroughly reviewing the official West Virginia Driver's Handbook and engaging in extensive supervised practice sessions that simulate various real-world driving conditions encountered in West Virginia. Explanation: the analysis reveals a scenario where a new driver in West Virginia is preparing for their driver's license road test. The professional challenge lies in ensuring the applicant understands and can demonstrate safe driving practices, adhering strictly to West Virginia's traffic laws and the Department of Motor Vehicles (DMV) testing procedures. This requires not just theoretical knowledge, but also practical application in a real-world driving context, under the observation of a DMV examiner. Careful judgment is required to assess the applicant's readiness and to identify any potential risks or areas needing further instruction. The best approach involves a comprehensive review of the West Virginia Driver's Handbook, focusing on practical application of rules of the road, safe maneuvering techniques, and defensive driving principles, as outlined by the West Virginia DMV. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the stated objectives of the West Virginia Driver's License Examination, which is designed to assess a driver's competency according to state-specific regulations and safety standards. Emphasizing practical demonstration of skills like proper lane changes, speed control, observation, and adherence to traffic signals and signs ensures the applicant meets the minimum requirements for safe operation of a vehicle on West Virginia roadways, as mandated by the West Virginia Code. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on memorizing traffic signs, without understanding their practical implications in various driving scenarios. This fails to meet the West Virginia DMV's requirement for demonstrating safe driving behavior, which extends beyond simple recognition to include appropriate response and judgment. Another incorrect approach is to practice only in familiar, low-traffic areas, neglecting the need to demonstrate competence in diverse traffic conditions, which is a crucial aspect of safe driving assessed during the West Virginia road test. Finally, relying on informal advice from friends or family without consulting official West Virginia DMV resources or a certified instructor is problematic, as it may lead to the adoption of unsafe habits or misinformation that contradicts state regulations. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes official state guidelines and practical skill development. This involves understanding the specific requirements of the West Virginia driver's license test, identifying the applicant's strengths and weaknesses through practice and feedback, and tailoring instruction to address any deficiencies in knowledge or skill, always referencing the West Virginia Driver's Handbook and relevant traffic laws. Question 3. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for increased traffic incidents in West Virginia if unqualified drivers are licensed. As a West Virginia DMV driver's license examiner, how should you approach the evaluation of an applicant demonstrating some nervousness, but otherwise appearing capable of operating a vehicle safely during their road test? Option A. Expedite the examination process and focus on the applicant's ability to follow basic directions, overlooking minor hesitations or deviations from perfect execution of maneuvers due to their apparent eagerness to obtain a license. Option B. Interpret the applicant's nervousness as a sign of potential underlying driving deficiencies, and therefore require them to repeat several maneuvers multiple times until their performance is flawless, even if it exceeds the standard testing time. Option C. Allow the applicant's accompanying family member, who is a licensed driver, to offer quiet encouragement and subtle guidance during the test to help ease the applicant's anxiety and improve their performance. Option D. Strictly adhere to the West Virginia DMV's established examination procedures, meticulously scoring all required maneuvers and vehicle checks against the official rubric, regardless of the applicant's perceived nervousness. Correct answer is D. Strictly adhere to the West Virginia DMV's established examination procedures, meticulously scoring all required maneuvers and vehicle checks against the official rubric, regardless of the applicant's perceived nervousness. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for a driver's license with the absolute necessity of ensuring public safety on West Virginia roadways. A hasty or incomplete assessment could lead to an unqualified driver operating a vehicle, posing a significant risk to themselves and others. The examiner must adhere strictly to the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles (DMV) regulations and established testing protocols to maintain the integrity of the licensing process. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves meticulously following the established West Virginia DMV driver's license examination procedures. This includes conducting a thorough vehicle safety inspection, accurately observing and documenting the applicant's performance against the official scoring rubric, and ensuring all required maneuvers are demonstrated without compromising safety. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with West Virginia Code Section 17B2-1, which mandates that the Commissioner of the DMV prescribe rules and regulations for the examination of applicants for driver's licenses, ensuring they possess the necessary knowledge and skill to operate a motor vehicle safely. Adherence to these established procedures is the primary ethical and regulatory obligation of the examiner. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing the applicant's perceived eagerness or stated need for a license over strict adherence to the testing criteria. This failure is a direct violation of West Virginia DMV regulations, as it introduces subjective bias and bypasses the objective assessment required to determine competency. It compromises public safety by potentially licensing an individual who has not met the minimum standards. Another incorrect approach is to overlook minor errors or deviations from the prescribed maneuvers, assuming they are insignificant. This is ethically and regulatorily unsound because West Virginia DMV testing protocols are designed to assess proficiency in specific skills critical for safe driving. Even minor deviations can indicate a lack of control or understanding, and overlooking them undermines the entire purpose of the examination and the safety standards West Virginia aims to uphold. A further incorrect approach involves allowing a family member or friend of the applicant to observe or influence the testing process. This introduces an unacceptable conflict of interest and compromises the objectivity of the examination. West Virginia DMV regulations require a neutral and impartial assessment, and external influence can lead to biased scoring or pressure on the examiner, jeopardizing the validity of the license issued. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and public safety above all else. This involves a commitment to understanding and strictly applying the West Virginia DMV's established procedures and scoring criteria. When faced with ambiguous situations or pressure, examiners should consult official guidelines, seek clarification from supervisors, and always err on the side of caution to ensure the safety of West Virginia's roads. Objectivity, impartiality, and a thorough understanding of the legal and ethical obligations are paramount. Question 4. Implementation of a new applicant processing system at the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles, DMV, requires examiners to be vigilant about applicant eligibility. An applicant presents for their driver's license road test, and during the preliminary document review, the examiner notices a minor, non-driving related infraction documented on the applicant's record from several years prior. This infraction is not a moving violation and has no direct connection to the applicant's ability to operate a motor vehicle safely. Considering the West Virginia DMV's mandate to ensure road safety while processing applicants efficiently, what is the most appropriate course of action for the examiner? Option A. Verify if the documented infraction has any bearing on driver's license eligibility according to West Virginia law and DMV policy. If it does not, and the applicant meets all other requirements, proceed with the road test. Option B. Allow the applicant to take the road test, but fail them if their driving performance is not absolutely perfect, using the infraction as a justification for the failure. Option C. Proceed with the road test without acknowledging or verifying the documented infraction, assuming it is irrelevant. Option D. Immediately deny the applicant the opportunity to take the road test due to the presence of any documented infraction, regardless of its nature. The correct answer is A. Verify if the documented infraction has any bearing on driver's license eligibility according to West Virginia law and DMV policy. If it does not, and the applicant meets all other requirements, proceed with the road test. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a licensing examiner to balance the need for efficient processing of applicants with the absolute mandate of ensuring public safety on West Virginia roadways. The examiner must make a judgment call on whether an applicant's minor, non-driving related infraction, while documented, poses a direct risk to their ability to operate a vehicle safely and legally. The pressure to process a high volume of applicants can create a temptation to overlook minor details, but the examiner's primary ethical and regulatory duty is to uphold the standards set by the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles, DMV, for driver licensing, which are designed to protect all road users. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough review of the applicant's entire driving record and any associated documentation provided by the West Virginia DMV. This approach prioritizes adherence to West Virginia DMV regulations by ensuring that all licensing criteria are met. Specifically, the examiner should verify if the applicant's documented infraction, even if not a moving violation, has any bearing on their eligibility for a driver's license, as defined by West Virginia Code Section 17B2-1 et sec. If the infraction does not disqualify them according to state law or DMV policy, and the applicant otherwise meets all testing and documentation requirements, proceeding with the test is the correct course of action. This upholds the principle of due process for the applicant while maintaining the integrity of the licensing process. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately deny the applicant the opportunity to test solely based on the presence of a non-driving related infraction without further investigation. This fails to adhere to West Virginia DMV regulations, which typically specify disqualifying factors related to driving ability or serious criminal offenses that directly impact road safety. Minor, unrelated infraction does not automatically equate to a lack of driving competence or a threat to public safety under West Virginia law. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with the test without acknowledging or verifying the documented infraction. While the infraction may not be a disqualifier, ignoring it demonstrates a lack of diligence and a failure to follow established West Virginia DMV procedures for applicant screening. This could lead to licensing individuals who might have other undisclosed issues that could impact their driving, even if not immediately apparent. A third incorrect approach is to allow the test to proceed, but then arbitrarily fail the applicant based on the infraction, even if their driving performance was satisfactory. This is unethical and violates the principles of fair and objective assessment mandated by the West Virginia DMV. The testing process is designed to evaluate driving skills, not to serve as a punitive measure for unrelated past conduct. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role must adopt a systematic approach. First, understand the specific West Virginia DMV regulations and statutes governing driver licensing eligibility. Second, meticulously review all provided documentation, distinguishing between driving-related offenses and other infractions. Third, apply the regulations objectively to the applicant's situation, determining if the infraction has any legal bearing on their eligibility. Fourth, if the applicant meets all criteria, proceed with the standardized testing procedure. If there is any ambiguity, consult with a supervisor or refer to official West Virginia DMV policy manuals for clarification before making a final decision. This ensures fairness, compliance, and the paramount goal of public safety on West Virginia roads. Question 5. To address the challenge of processing a driver's license learner's permit application in West Virginia, what is the most appropriate procedural step for a DMV employee when reviewing an applicant's submitted documents, considering the potential for errors that could lead to an invalid permit? Option A. Conduct a thorough, systematic verification of all submitted documents against the specific requirements outlined in the West Virginia Code for learner's permits, ensuring all proofs of identity, residency, and any required testing results are current and accurate. Option B. Accept the applicant's verbal assurance that they understand West Virginia traffic laws without verifying completion of any mandatory knowledge assessments or driver's education components. Option C. Overlook a slight inconsistency in the applicant's proof of residency, such as a utility bill that is a few weeks past the acceptable date range, to maintain processing speed. Option D. Expedite the application by approving it if the applicant appears to meet the basic age and identity requirements, assuming minor discrepancies in supporting documents are acceptable for initial processing. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough, systematic verification of all submitted documents against the specific requirements outlined in the West Virginia Code for learner's permits, ensuring all proofs of identity, residency, and any required testing results are current and accurate. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for efficient processing of driver's license applications with the absolute imperative of adhering to West Virginia's specific traffic laws and licensing requirements. Misinterpreting or overlooking a crucial detail in the application process, even with good intentions, can lead to the issuance of an invalid license, creating significant legal and safety risks for both the applicant and the public. The DMV employee must exercise meticulous attention to detail and a thorough understanding of the West Virginia Code governing driver's licenses. Correct approach analysis. The best approach involves a systematic review of the applicant's documentation against the West Virginia Code, specifically focusing on the requirements for a learner's permit as outlined in Chapter 17B of the West Virginia Code. This includes verifying the applicant's age, proof of identity and residency, and ensuring all required forms are completed accurately and truthfully. The employee must then cross-reference this information with the applicant's vision test results and any other mandated pre-licensing assessments. This methodical process ensures compliance with all legal prerequisites before proceeding, thereby preventing the issuance of an invalid permit and upholding public safety standards mandated by West Virginia law. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves approving the application based on a superficial review, assuming the applicant has met all requirements because they possess the basic documents. This fails to comply with the West Virginia Code's mandate for thorough verification of all eligibility criteria, potentially leading to the issuance of an invalid permit. This bypasses the due diligence required by law and creates a significant safety and legal liability. Another incorrect approach is to expedite the process by overlooking a minor discrepancy in the proof of residency, such as a utility bill that is slightly outdated. While seemingly efficient, this directly violates the West Virginia Code's explicit requirements for valid proof of residency, which are designed to ensure the applicant is a bona fide resident of the state. This can result in a license being issued to someone not legally entitled to it. A further incorrect approach is to rely solely on the applicant's verbal confirmation of understanding West Virginia traffic laws without verifying completion of any required driver's education or knowledge testing components as stipulated by state law. This neglects the legal obligation to ensure applicants possess the necessary knowledge to operate a vehicle safely and responsibly on West Virginia roadways. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role must adopt a compliance-first mindset. This involves understanding that efficiency should never come at the expense of legal accuracy. A structured checklist approach, informed by the specific statutes of West Virginia, e.g., Chapter 17B, is crucial. When faced with any ambiguity or incomplete information, the professional's duty is to seek clarification or request additional documentation, rather than making assumptions or proceeding with a potentially invalid application. This ensures adherence to the law and protects the integrity of the licensing system. Question 6. Examination of the data shows a backlog of driver's license applications at a West Virginia DMV office. An applicant presents a utility bill for proof of residency, but the bill is addressed to their spouse, who also resides at the same address. The applicant states they are unable to provide any other proof of residency in their own name. Considering the West Virginia Code, what is the most appropriate course of action for the DMV employee? Option A. Accept the utility bill as proof of residency, noting the applicant's statement that they share the address with their spouse, to expedite the processing of the application and reduce the backlog. Option B. Politely inform the applicant that the utility bill cannot be accepted as proof of residency because it is not in their name, and explain the specific West Virginia Code requirements for proof of residency, offering to assist them in finding alternative acceptable documentation. Option C. Issue a temporary driver's permit and instruct the applicant to return with a utility bill or other acceptable proof of residency in their own name within 30 days, without further verification of their current situation. Option D. Reject the application outright without further explanation, citing the inability to verify residency, and advise the applicant to reapply when they have the correct documentation. The correct answer is B. Politely inform the applicant that the utility bill cannot be accepted as proof of residency because it is not in their name, and explain the specific West Virginia Code requirements for proof of residency, offering to assist them in finding alternative acceptable documentation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for efficient processing of driver's license applications with the absolute necessity of adhering to West Virginia's specific legal requirements for documentation and verification. Misinterpreting or overlooking these requirements can lead to significant administrative errors, potential legal challenges, and a breakdown in public trust. The pressure to process applications quickly can create a temptation to take shortcuts, which is where careful judgment and a thorough understanding of the West Virginia Code are paramount. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves meticulously verifying each document against the requirements outlined in the West Virginia Code, specifically focusing on the acceptable forms of identification and proof of residency. This approach ensures that every applicant meets the state's legal criteria before a license is issued. The justification for this approach lies in West Virginia Code Section 17B2-1, which mandates that the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles shall issue a driver's license only upon satisfactory proof of identity, date of birth, legal presence in the United States, and West Virginia residency. By strictly adhering to these documented requirements, the DMV employee upholds the integrity of the licensing process and complies directly with state law. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves accepting a utility bill that is not in the applicant's name, even if the applicant claims to reside at that address. This fails to meet the West Virginia Code's requirement for proof of residency, which typically necessitates a document bearing the applicant's name and current address. This shortcut bypasses a critical verification step, potentially leading to fraudulent applications and a violation of the law. Another incorrect approach is to issue a license based solely on a foreign identification document without confirming its validity and equivalence to West Virginia's required identification standards. The West Virginia Code specifies acceptable forms of identification, and simply accepting any foreign document without proper verification or cross-referencing against established protocols is a direct contravention of the law's intent to ensure accurate applicant information. A further incorrect approach is to expedite the process by waiving the requirement for a Social Security card or proof of ineligibility if the applicant states they do not have one, without following the established procedure for documenting this exception. West Virginia law requires verification of Social Security status or a valid reason for its absence. Failing to follow the prescribed procedure for handling such cases undermines the systematic verification process mandated by the state. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should employ a systematic, document-driven decision-making process. This involves 1. Clearly understanding the specific requirements of the West Virginia Code for each type of application. 2. Developing a checklist based on these legal requirements. 3. Verifying each piece of documentation against the checklist and the applicant's stated information. 4. Seeking clarification from supervisors or legal counsel when encountering ambiguous situations or documents that do not clearly meet the criteria. 5. Prioritizing legal compliance and accuracy over speed when there is a conflict. Question 7. Research into West Virginia traffic law indicates that drivers must exercise caution and judgment when approaching intersections. During a West Virginia DMV driving test, an applicant approaches an intersection controlled by a flashing yellow light and a stop sign. What is the most appropriate action to take to demonstrate compliance with West Virginia traffic regulations and safe driving practices? Option A. Accelerate through the intersection to clear it quickly before any potential oncoming traffic arrives. Option B. Stop completely at the stop sign and then immediately proceed without further observation, assuming the flashing yellow light negates the need for further caution. Option C. Slow down, scan for traffic and pedestrians, and proceed with caution only when the intersection is clear and it is safe to do so, treating the flashing yellow light as a warning to proceed with caution after stopping for the stop sign. Option D. Proceed through the intersection at the posted speed limit, as the flashing yellow light indicates the right-of-way. The correct answer is C. Slow down, scan for traffic and pedestrians, and proceed with caution only when the intersection is clear and it is safe to do so, treating the flashing yellow light as a warning to proceed with caution after stopping for the stop sign. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to interpret and apply complex traffic laws in a dynamic, real-world situation, balancing immediate safety with adherence to regulations. The pressure of the test environment can exacerbate stress, making clear judgment and recall of rules critical. The examiner's role is to assess not just mechanical driving skill, but also the applicant's understanding and application of West Virginia traffic laws, as outlined in the West Virginia Driver's Handbook and relevant statutes. Correct approach analysis. The best approach involves a systematic defensive driving strategy that prioritizes safety and clear communication of intent, directly aligning with West Virginia traffic laws and the principles of safe driving. This includes slowing down to a speed that allows for safe observation and reaction, signaling intentions clearly and well in advance, and yielding the right-of-way when necessary, all while maintaining awareness of other road users and potential hazards. This approach directly reflects the emphasis on safe operation and adherence to traffic control devices and right-of-way rules mandated by West Virginia Code, Chapter 17C, Traffic Regulations and Laws Governing Movement of Vehicles. Specifically, it addresses the requirement to operate a vehicle with due regard for safety and to obey all traffic signals and signs. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding through the intersection at the posted speed limit without fully assessing the situation. This fails to account for the potential for unexpected hazards or the need to yield, violating the general duty of care to operate a vehicle safely and potentially contravening specific West Virginia regulations regarding yielding at intersections or when visibility is impaired. Another incorrect approach is to stop abruptly and unnecessarily before the intersection, causing a traffic disruption and potentially confusing other drivers. A caution is important. An unnecessary stop can be as dangerous as proceeding recklessly and does not demonstrate an understanding of appropriate intersection procedures as outlined in West Virginia traffic law, which emphasizes smooth and predictable maneuvers. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to force a way through the intersection by accelerating rapidly to beat any potential oncoming traffic. This is an aggressive and dangerous maneuver that directly violates the principles of safe driving and the right-of-way rules, increasing the risk of a collision and demonstrating a disregard for the safety of oneself and others, which is a fundamental breach of West Virginia traffic regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first activating their hazard perception skills, which involves scanning the environment for potential risks. Then, they should recall the relevant traffic laws and apply them systematically. This involves a decision-making process that prioritizes safety, followed by adherence to legal requirements, and finally, clear communication of intent through signaling. This structured approach ensures that all aspects of safe and legal driving are considered. Question 8. Which approach would be the most effective and legally compliant method for a West Virginia DMV employee to process a driver's license application when presented with a standard set of required documents? Option A. Prioritize speed by processing the application based on the applicant's self-declared information, assuming the documents are generally in order. Option B. Systematically verify all submitted documents against the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles' established list of acceptable proofs for identity, residency, and legal presence. Option C. Rely on the applicant's assurance of their legal name and date of birth, using only one form of identification for verification. Option D. Accept the applicant's verbal confirmation of residency and expedite the process by overlooking minor inconsistencies in provided identification. The correct answer is B. Systematically verify all submitted documents against the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles' established list of acceptable proofs for identity, residency, and legal presence. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the efficient processing of driver's license applications with the absolute necessity of adhering to West Virginia's specific legal requirements for documentation and verification. Failure to do so can lead to improper issuance of licenses, potential legal repercussions for the DMV, and compromised public safety. The DMV employee must exercise careful judgment to ensure compliance without creating undue delays for applicants. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a systematic verification of all required documentation against the standards set forth by the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles, DMV. This approach ensures that each applicant meets the precise legal criteria for obtaining a driver's license, as outlined in West Virginia Code Section 17B2-1 et sec. and associated DMV regulations. This method prioritizes legal compliance and accuracy, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the licensing process and upholding public trust. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves accepting an applicant's self-attestation of residency without verifying it against acceptable proof, such as utility bills or lease agreements as stipulated by West Virginia DMV policy. This bypasses a critical verification step, potentially leading to the issuance of a license to an individual who does not legally reside in the state, violating the residency requirements mandated by West Virginia law. Another unacceptable approach is to expedite the process by overlooking minor discrepancies in the applicant's provided documents, such as a slightly outdated proof of identity. While seemingly efficient, this action disregards the specific requirements for document validity outlined by the West Virginia DMV. Such leniency can result in the acceptance of fraudulent or insufficient documentation, undermining the legal framework governing driver's licenses in West Virginia. A further flawed approach is to rely solely on the applicant's word regarding their legal name and date of birth, without cross-referencing this information with official identification documents like a birth certificate or social security card. This neglects a fundamental aspect of identity verification, which is crucial for preventing identity fraud and ensuring that licenses are issued to the correct individuals, as mandated by West Virginia's identification verification protocols. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should adopt a process-oriented mindset, treating each application as a distinct case requiring thorough, step-by-step adherence to established procedures. The decision-making framework should prioritize legal compliance and accuracy above all else. When faced with ambiguity or potential shortcuts, professionals must consult the official West Virginia DMV guidelines and regulations to ensure their actions align with legal mandates. If unsure, seeking guidance from a supervisor or referring to the official procedural manual is the responsible course of action. Question 9. Benchmark analysis indicates that during a West Virginia DMV driver's test, a driver approaches an intersection with a red light and a sign clearly stating "No turn on red." There is no cross-traffic, and the driver is considering making a right turn. Which of the following approaches best demonstrates adherence to West Virginia traffic laws and safe driving practices? Option A. Hesitate at the intersection, unsure of how to proceed, and wait for further instructions or for traffic conditions to change significantly. Option B. Proceed with the right turn on red, as there is no immediate cross-traffic to create a hazard. Option C. Assume that the "No turn on red" sign is a suggestion and proceed with the turn if it appears safe. Option D. Wait for the light to turn green and then make the right turn, or if a right turn on red is permitted and safe, proceed after stopping. The correct answer is D. Wait for the light to turn green and then make the right turn, or if a right turn on red is permitted and safe, proceed after stopping. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to interpret and apply complex traffic laws in a dynamic real-world situation, where a misinterpretation can lead to immediate safety risks and legal consequences. The pressure of a driving test amplifies the need for precise adherence to regulations. Correct approach analysis. The best approach involves a driver actively observing and processing all available traffic control devices and road signs, prioritizing those that dictate immediate action or prohibition, and then executing the maneuver in a manner that is both safe and compliant with West Virginia traffic laws. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with West Virginia Code Section 17C2-1, which mandates that drivers obey traffic control devices, and Section 17C5-1, which outlines the general rules for safe driving and yielding. Specifically, recognizing and responding to a "No turn on red" sign before attempting a right turn on red is a fundamental requirement for lawful and safe operation of a vehicle in West Virginia. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the turn on red simply because there is no immediate oncoming traffic. This fails to acknowledge the explicit prohibition indicated by the "No turn on red" sign, violating West Virginia Code Section 17C2-1. The absence of other vehicles does not negate the legal restriction. Another incorrect approach is to rely on the assumption that other drivers will anticipate the intended maneuver. This demonstrates a lack of proactive observation and adherence to traffic control devices, which is a violation of West Virginia Code Section 17C5-1, concerning safe driving practices. The driver is responsible for ensuring their actions are lawful, not for assuming others will accommodate potential violations. A third incorrect approach is to hesitate indefinitely at the intersection without making a decision or taking any action. While caution is important, prolonged inaction can impede traffic flow and may be interpreted as an inability to safely navigate the intersection, which is contrary to the objective of demonstrating driving proficiency required by the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach to intersection navigation. This involves a continuous scan of the environment, identification of all traffic control devices, understanding their meaning according to West Virginia law, and then executing maneuvers only when they are both safe and legally permissible. When faced with conflicting information or complex situations, prioritizing explicit regulatory signage and ensuring absolute compliance with traffic laws is paramount. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a commercial truck driver operating in West Virginia must ensure their vehicle does not exceed the gross vehicle weight rating, GVWR, for its class. A driver has a truck with an empty weight tare weight of 500 pounds. The driver intends to haul a load of lumber. If each board weighs approximately 25 pounds and the driver plans to load 600 boards, what is the total weight of the truck and its cargo, and is it compliant with a hypothetical GVWR of 26,000 pounds as stipulated by West Virginia regulations for this vehicle class? Option A. The total weight is 500 pounds, which exceeds the 26,000 pound GVWR and is non-compliant. Option B. The total weight is 26,000 pounds, which meets the 26,000 pound GVWR and is compliant. Option C. The total weight is 15,000 pounds, which is below the 26,000 pound GVWR and is compliant. Option D. The total weight is 500 pounds, which is below the 26,000 pound GVWR and is compliant. The correct answer is A. The total weight is 500 pounds, which exceeds the 26,000 pound GVWR and is non-compliant. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a precise application of mathematical principles to ensure compliance with West Virginia's traffic safety regulations, specifically concerning vehicle weight limits. Miscalculating the load capacity can lead to fines, safety hazards, and potential legal repercussions for the driver and the vehicle owner. The driver must demonstrate not only an understanding of basic arithmetic, but also the ability to apply it to a real-world regulatory context. Correct approach analysis. The best approach involves accurately calculating the total weight of the vehicle and its intended cargo, then comparing this to the legally permissible gross vehicle weight limit for the specific class of vehicle as defined by West Virginia law. This method directly addresses the core requirement of the West Virginia DMV's focus on safe operation within legal parameters. The calculation would involve summing the empty weight of the truck, tare weight, with the weight of the cargo. If this sum is less than or equal to the gross vehicle weight rating, GVWR, specified by West Virginia regulations for that vehicle class, then the load is compliant. This aligns with the West Virginia Code, which mandates adherence to weight restrictions to ensure road safety and prevent infrastructure damage. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to estimate the cargo weight based on volume or general knowledge without precise measurement. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement for accuracy and could easily lead to exceeding the legal weight limit, violating West Virginia Code Section 17C17-1 et sec. Another incorrect approach would be to only consider the weight of the cargo and ignore the tare weight of the truck. This would result in an incomplete and inaccurate total weight calculation, making it impossible to determine compliance with the GVWR, which is a critical safety standard in West Virginia. Finally, an approach that relies solely on the truck speedometer reading or a visual inspection of the suspension to gauge weight is not a quantifiable or legally recognized method for determining compliance with weight regulations in West Virginia. Professional reasoning. Professionals should always prioritize accuracy and adherence to established legal standards. When dealing with weight restrictions, precise measurement and calculation are paramount. A systematic approach, starting with known values, tare weight, cargo weight, and applying the relevant regulatory limits, GVWR, ensures compliance and promotes safety. If there is any doubt about the accuracy of measurements or calculations, seeking clarification or remeasurement is the responsible course of action. Question 11. Risk assessment procedures indicate that an applicant for a West Virginia driver's license has a documented history of substance abuse, but states they have been in remission for 2 years and are actively participating in support groups. What is the most appropriate course of action for the West Virginia DMV to ensure public safety while adhering to licensing regulations? Option A. Issue a standard driver's license with no additional conditions or evaluations, trusting the applicant's statement of recovery. Option B. Permanently deny the driver's license application without further consideration due to the applicant's past history of substance abuse. Option C. Require a comprehensive medical and psychological evaluation, review of treatment records if available, and potentially impose probationary license conditions based on the findings to verify current fitness to drive. Option D. Immediately approve the driver's license based on the applicant's self-reported 2 years of remission and participation in support groups. The correct answer is C. Require a comprehensive medical and psychological evaluation, review of treatment records if available, and potentially impose probationary license conditions based on the findings to verify current fitness to drive. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for a driver's license with the absolute priority of ensuring public safety on West Virginia roads. The applicant's admitted history of substance abuse, even if in remission, presents a potential ongoing risk that must be rigorously assessed according to West Virginia's specific licensing regulations. A superficial or overly lenient approach could have severe consequences, while an overly punitive one might unfairly penalize an individual who has genuinely rehabilitated. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing interests. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough, documented evaluation of the applicant's current fitness to drive, directly referencing West Virginia's specific requirements for individuals with a history of substance abuse. This approach prioritizes safety by ensuring all necessary medical and psychological assessments are completed, and that the applicant demonstrates sustained sobriety and understanding of the responsibilities of driving. West Virginia Code Section 17B2-1 specifically addresses the issuance of licenses and the authority of the Commissioner to deny or revoke licenses when an applicant is deemed an unsafe driver, which includes considerations for physical or mental conditions that impair driving ability. A comprehensive review, potentially including a medical evaluation and a review of treatment records, aligns with the state's mandate to protect the public. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately approving the license based solely on the applicant's assertion of being in remission. This fails to meet the West Virginia DMV's obligation to verify fitness to drive. West Virginia Code Section 17B3-3 grants the Commissioner broad authority to require examinations to determine an applicant's qualifications. Relying only on self-reporting without independent verification is a regulatory failure and an ethical lapse, as it bypasses the established safety protocols designed to prevent impaired driving. Another incorrect approach is to permanently deny the license without any opportunity for re-evaluation or demonstration of sustained recovery. While safety is paramount, West Virginia law often allows for rehabilitation and reapplication under specific conditions. A blanket denial without considering evidence of successful long-term recovery and current fitness to drive may be overly punitive and not in line with the spirit of rehabilitation often considered in licensing matters, potentially exceeding the Commissioner's discretionary powers without sufficient justification. A third incorrect approach is to approve the license with minimal or no conditions, despite the applicant's history. This ignores the potential for relapse and the inherent risks associated with driving under the influence of substances. West Virginia's DMV has a duty to implement measures that mitigate risk, and simply accepting an applicant's word without further scrutiny or probationary measures would be a dereliction of this duty, potentially leading to future accidents and violating the state's commitment to road safety. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should follow a structured decision-making process. First, they must identify and understand the specific West Virginia DMV regulations pertaining to driver licensing and individuals with a history of substance abuse. Second, they They should gather all available information, including the applicant's statements, any existing records, and consider the need for additional assessments. Third, they must apply the regulations to the gathered information, weighing the applicant's current fitness against the potential risks to public safety. Finally, they should document their decision-making process and the rationale behind their chosen course of action, ensuring it aligns with both legal requirements and ethical obligations to protect the public. Question 12. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a driver's license examiner in West Virginia is administering a road test to an applicant who, during the test, momentarily forgets to signal a lane change, but otherwise demonstrates competent driving skills. The applicant also expresses significant anxiety about failing the test due to an urgent need for employment that requires a driver's license. Considering the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles regulations and the paramount importance of public safety, which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and professionally sound approach for the examiner? Option A. Pass the applicant, acknowledging the minor error, because their urgent need for employment outweighs the procedural lapse in signaling. Option B. Allow the applicant to immediately repeat the lane change maneuver until they signal correctly, bypassing the standard testing protocol for that specific error. Option C. Overlook the failure to signal, considering it a minor oversight given the applicant's otherwise competent driving and expressed anxiety. Option D. Objectively score the applicant's performance against the established West Virginia driver's license examination standards, noting the failure to signal as a specific error, and proceed with the evaluation based on the overall performance and adherence to all other criteria. Correct answer is D. Objectively score the applicant's performance against the established West Virginia driver's license examination standards, noting the failure to signal as a specific error, and proceed with the evaluation based on the overall performance and adherence to all other criteria. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for a driver's license with the legal and safety mandates of the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles, DMV. A licensing examiner must adhere strictly to established procedures and legal requirements to ensure public safety, even when faced with a candidate who may be eager or under pressure. The examiner's judgment must be grounded in the regulations governing driver licensing in West Virginia, not personal discretion or assumptions. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough and objective evaluation of the applicant's performance against the established West Virginia driver's license examination standards. This approach ensures that all candidates are assessed fairly, and that only those who demonstrate the required proficiency and understanding of safe driving practices are licensed. This aligns with the West Virginia DMV's mandate to promote road safety by licensing competent drivers, as outlined in West Virginia Code Section 17B2-1 et sec., which details the requirements for obtaining a driver's license and the authority of the Commissioner of the DMV to establish examination procedures. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves overlooking a minor, but potentially significant, procedural error by the applicant, such as failing to signal a lane change. This is professionally unacceptable because it deviates from the established testing criteria and compromises the integrity of the examination process. The West Virginia DMV's driver's manual and examination checklists are designed to identify specific driving behaviors that contribute to safety. Ignoring such an infraction, even if seemingly minor, can lead to the licensing of an individual who may not fully grasp or consistently apply critical safety protocols, potentially endangering themselves and others. Another incorrect approach is to pass the applicant based on their stated need for a license for employment. This is ethically and legally flawed. The licensing process in West Virginia is solely based on demonstrated driving ability and knowledge of traffic laws, not on the applicant's personal circumstances or perceived urgency. Allowing personal considerations to override objective assessment violates the principle of equal application of the law and undermines the safety objectives of the DMV. A third incorrect approach involves allowing the applicant to retake a specific maneuver immediately without completing the entire test and without following the established retesting protocols. This bypasses the standardized testing procedure and introduces an element of subjectivity. West Virginia DMV regulations typically outline specific procedures for retesting or for handling errors during the examination, and deviating from these established protocols is not permissible. It creates an inconsistent and potentially unfair testing environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role must adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to regulatory requirements and ethical conduct. This involves 1. Understanding and internalizing all relevant West Virginia DMV laws, regulations, and examination procedures. 2. Conducting objective assessments based solely on observable performance against established criteria. 3. Recognizing that personal circumstances or perceived urgency do not supersede legal and safety mandates. 4. Maintaining professional integrity by consistently applying the rules to all applicants. 5. Documenting all observations and decisions accurately. Question 13. Quality control measures reveal that the West Virginia Department of Motor Vehicles is experiencing delays in processing drivers' license applications due to the thoroughness of its verification procedures. To improve efficiency, a proposal suggests allowing applicants to proceed to the driving skills test even if certain supporting documents are pending verification, with the understanding that these will be finalized post-testing, which approach best upholds the integrity of the West Virginia driver's licensing system and ensures compliance with state regulations. Option A. Expedite the process by bypassing the standard verification steps for applicants who claim significant prior driving experience, allowing them direct access to the driving skills test. Option B. Implement a multi-stage review process where initial screening confirms completeness and basic eligibility against West Virginia Code, Chapter 17B, Article 3, followed by a comprehensive verification of all documentation and database checks before allowing progression to the driving test. Option C. Allow applicants to proceed to the driving test with incomplete documentation, with a commitment to obtaining the missing items after the test is successfully completed. Option D. Rely primarily on the applicant's self-attestation of qualifications and experience, minimizing the need for extensive independent document verification before the driving test. The correct answer is B. Implement a multi-stage review process where initial screening confirms completeness and basic eligibility against West Virginia Code, Chapter 17B, Article 3, followed by a comprehensive verification of all documentation and database checks before allowing progression to the driving test. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient processing of driver's license applications with the absolute imperative of ensuring compliance with West Virginia's traffic laws and safety regulations. A rushed or incomplete review process, even with the intention of improving workflow, can lead to unqualified individuals obtaining licenses, thereby compromising public safety on West Virginia roadways. The pressure to optimize processes must never override the legal and ethical obligations to verify applicant eligibility and adherence to all statutory requirements. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves implementing a multi-stage review process where each application is initially screened for completeness and basic eligibility against West Virginia Code Chapter 17B, Article 3, Licenses and Permits. This is followed by a more in-depth verification of documentation and a check against any relevant databases for disqualifying factors, as mandated by West Virginia's Department of Motor Vehicles, DMV, operational guidelines. This approach ensures that all legal prerequisites are met before an applicant proceeds to testing, directly aligning with the legislative intent of the licensing statutes to promote safe driving and prevent the issuance of licenses to those who do not meet the established standards. This systematic verification is the bedrock of responsible licensing. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing speed by allowing applicants to proceed to the driving test with incomplete documentation, assuming that any missing items can be rectified later. This directly violates West Virginia Code Chapter 17B, Article 3, which outlines the specific documentation required for license issuance. It creates a significant regulatory failure by potentially allowing individuals to operate vehicles without fulfilling the legal requirements for licensure, thereby undermining public safety and the integrity of the licensing system. Another unacceptable approach is to rely solely on self-reported information without independent verification of critical details, such as residency or prior driving history, even if the applicant appears confident. West Virginia law and DMV procedures require verification of such information to ensure the applicant is genuinely eligible and to prevent fraud. This failure to verify is a direct contravention of established administrative rules and can lead to the issuance of licenses to individuals who are not legally entitled to them, posing a risk to other road users. A third flawed approach is to bypass the standard review process for applicants who claim to have extensive driving experience, assuming their competence. West Virginia Code Chapter 17B, Article 3, and associated DMV regulations do not provide exemptions from the standard application and verification procedures based on perceived experience. Every applicant must demonstrate compliance with the established legal framework for obtaining a driver's license, regardless of their background. This bypass represents a significant procedural and regulatory failure. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role must adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance and public safety above all else. This involves understanding the specific requirements of West Virginia Code Chapter 17B and the operational guidelines of the West Virginia DMV. When faced with process optimization pressures, the framework should be: 1. Identify the core legal and regulatory requirements for driver's license issuance. 2. Evaluate proposed process changes against these requirements to ensure no compromise. 3. Implement efficiency measures that enhance verification and compliance rather than circumventing them. 4. Maintain a commitment to thoroughness and accuracy in every step of the application and verification process. Question 14. Governance review demonstrates that the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles, DMV, is experiencing delays in processing new driver's license applications due to an inefficient manual review process for out-of-state transfers. Considering the need for both efficiency and strict adherence to West Virginia licensing laws, which of the following strategies would best optimize this process? Option A. Increase the number of personnel performing manual reviews without altering the existing workflow. Option B. Expedite processing by reducing the depth of verification for out-of-state license transfers. Option C. Outsource the entire verification process to an external vendor with minimal oversight. Option D. Implement a technology-assisted verification system that automates checks against West Virginia's licensing criteria for out-of-state transfers. The correct answer is D. Implement a technology-assisted verification system that automates checks against West Virginia's licensing criteria for out-of-state transfers. Explanation. Governance review demonstrates that the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles, DMV, is experiencing delays in processing new driver's license applications due to an inefficient manual review process for out-of-state transfers. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for thoroughness and adherence to West Virginia's specific licensing laws with the imperative to provide timely service to applicants. The pressure to reduce wait times must not compromise the integrity of the licensing system or lead to violations of West Virginia Code. The best approach involves implementing a streamlined, technology-assisted verification system for out-of-state transfers. The system would leverage secure digital databases and automated checks against established West Virginia DMV criteria for license issuance. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the identified bottleneck by optimizing the review process without sacrificing accuracy or compliance. It aligns with the West Virginia DMV's mandate to ensure all licensed drivers meet the state's requirements, as outlined in West Virginia Code Section 17B2-1 et sec., which governs driver's licenses and their issuance. By automating routine checks, DMV staff can focus on complex cases requiring human judgment, thereby improving efficiency and reducing processing times in accordance with the spirit of providing effective public service. An approach that involves bypassing certain verification steps for out-of-state transfers to expedite processing is incorrect. This would violate West Virginia Code Section 17B2-10, which mandates that applicants transferring an out-of-state license must meet West Virginia's vision, knowledge, and road test requirements, or have their existing license verified as equivalent. Failing to conduct proper verification undermines the safety and integrity of the licensing system. Another incorrect approach would be to simply increase the number of staff processing applications manually without any process improvement. While this might temporarily alleviate the backlog, It does not address the root cause of inefficiency and is not a sustainable or optimized solution. It fails to leverage modern technological capabilities and represents a missed opportunity for process optimization, potentially leading to continued high operational costs and burnout among staff. A further incorrect approach would be to outsource the entire verification process to a third-party vendor without rigorous oversight and integration with West Virginia DMV systems. This could lead to data security risks and a lack of direct control over compliance with West Virginia's specific licensing regulations, potentially creating liabilities and compromising the accuracy of the information used for licensing decisions. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the existing process and its pain points. This should be followed by identifying potential solutions that align with regulatory requirements and operational goals. Evaluating each solution against criteria such as efficiency, cost-effectiveness, regulatory compliance, and impact on service delivery is crucial. Pilot testing and continuous monitoring are essential to ensure the chosen solution is effective and sustainable. Question 15. System analysis indicates that during a West Virginia driver's license examination, an applicant approaches an intersection controlled by a stop sign. The examiner is observing the applicant's adherence to traffic laws and safe driving practices. What is the most appropriate action for the applicant to take at the stop sign to demonstrate compliance with West Virginia regulations and safe driving principles? Option A. Perform a rolling stop, slowing down but not bringing the vehicle to a complete halt before proceeding. Option B. Stop the vehicle only after entering the intersection, ensuring no immediate cross-traffic is present. Option C. Come to a complete stop at the clearly marked stop line, check for traffic in all directions, and proceed only when it is safe to do so. Option D. Stop the vehicle at the stop sign itself, even if it is positioned before the designated stopping point. The correct answer is C. Come to a complete stop at the clearly marked stop line, check for traffic in all directions, and proceed only when it is safe to do so. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate not only knowledge of West Virginia traffic laws, but also the ability to apply them in a practical, real-world context. The examiner must assess the applicant's judgment and adherence to safety protocols, which are paramount for public safety on West Virginia roadways. Misinterpreting or failing to adhere to specific traffic control devices, such as a stop sign, can have immediate and severe consequences. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves the applicant demonstrating a complete and safe stop at the designated stop line or before entering the intersection, checking for traffic in all directions, and proceeding only when it is safe to do so. This approach directly aligns with West Virginia Code Section 17C2-10, which mandates that drivers stop at a clearly marked stop line, or if none, before entering the crosswalk on the near side of the intersection, or in the absence of both, at the point nearest the intersecting roadway where the driver has a view of approaching traffic. This ensures compliance with traffic control devices and prioritizes the safety of all road users, a core ethical responsibility for any licensed driver. Incorrect approaches analysis. Failing to come to a complete stop at the stop sign is a direct violation of West Virginia traffic laws and demonstrates a lack of understanding of fundamental traffic control. This poses a significant safety risk by potentially causing collisions with cross-traffic or pedestrians. Proceeding into the intersection without ensuring it is safe, even after a rolling stop, shows a disregard for the rights of other drivers and a failure to exercise due care, which is a breach of the implicit duty of care owed to the public. Stopping only after entering the intersection, rather than at the designated point, indicates a misunderstanding of the required stopping position and a potential inability to accurately judge safe stopping distances and visibility. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach situations requiring judgment and adherence to regulations by prioritizing safety and compliance. This involves understanding the letter and spirit of the law, anticipating potential hazards, and making decisions that minimize risk to themselves and others. In the context of a driving test, this means meticulously following all instructions and demonstrating a thorough understanding of traffic control devices and safe driving practices as outlined in West Virginia's Traffic Code. Question 16. Risk assessment procedures indicate that an applicant for a West Virginia driver's license is exhibiting some nervousness and makes a minor error in signaling a lane change, but otherwise demonstrates good control of the vehicle and awareness of traffic laws. Which approach best aligns with West Virginia DMV licensing requirements and public safety principles? Option A. Pass the applicant, considering the minor signaling error as insignificant given their overall competent driving and confidence, assuming they will learn to be more precise with practice. Option B. Focus on the applicant's overall assertiveness and quick reaction times, overlooking the minor signaling lapse as a sign of their eagerness to drive, and proceed with issuing the license. Option C. Allow the applicant's accompanying parent, who is a licensed driver, to provide verbal guidance on signaling and lane changes during the test to help them correct their mistakes. Option D. Conduct a thorough evaluation of all required maneuvers and adherence to traffic laws, as per the West Virginia Driver's Handbook, documenting all observations objectively, and making a decision based solely on whether the applicant meets all critical safety standards. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough evaluation of all required maneuvers and adherence to traffic laws, as per the West Virginia Driver's Handbook, documenting all observations objectively, and making a decision based solely on whether the applicant meets all critical safety standards. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for a driver's license with the absolute priority of ensuring public safety on West Virginia roads. A licensing examiner must exercise sound judgment, adhering strictly to West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles (DMV) regulations to prevent unqualified individuals from operating motor vehicles. The pressure to process applicants efficiently must never compromise the integrity of the licensing process or the safety of other road users. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough and objective evaluation of the applicant's performance against the established West Virginia Driver's Handbook standards. This approach prioritizes safety by ensuring the applicant demonstrates all required skills and knowledge before being granted a license. Specifically, the examiner must meticulously observe the applicant's adherence to traffic laws, their ability to control the vehicle in various situations, and their overall awareness of their surroundings, as outlined in the West Virginia DMV's testing criteria. This aligns with the ethical obligation to protect the public and the regulatory mandate to license only competent drivers. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves overlooking minor errors, such as a slight hesitation at a stop sign or a brief moment of uncertainty during a lane change, with the justification that the applicant mostly followed the rules. This is a failure to adhere to the West Virginia DMV's strict performance standards, which do not allow for mostly competent driving. Such leniency can lead to the licensing of individuals who may pose a risk to themselves and others due to underdeveloped driving skills or a lack of full understanding of traffic regulations. Another incorrect approach is to pass an applicant based on their perceived confidence or assertiveness, even if their practical driving skills are demonstrably weak, or they exhibit a disregard for specific traffic control devices. West Virginia law and DMV regulations emphasize observable driving competency, not personality traits. Relying on subjective impressions rather than objective performance metrics violates the core principles of the driver's licensing process and compromises public safety. A third incorrect approach is to allow a family member or friend to coach the applicant during the test, or to overlook infractions because the applicant is known to the examiner. This represents a severe ethical breach and a violation of West Virginia DMV policy regarding impartiality and the integrity of the testing process. Such actions undermine the fairness and validity of the examination, potentially leading to the licensing of individuals who have not been fairly assessed and who may not be safe drivers. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role must adopt a decision-making framework centered on objective assessment and strict adherence to regulatory guidelines. This involves understanding that the driver's license is a privilege, not a right, and that its issuance carries significant responsibility for public safety. When faced with ambiguity or pressure, the examiner should always err on the side of caution, prioritizing the safety of the public over expediency or personal relationships. Regular review of the West Virginia Driver's Handbook and ongoing training on best practices for objective evaluation are crucial for maintaining professional integrity and ensuring compliance. Question 17. The efficiency study reveals a need to streamline the driver's license renewal process at the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles. Which of the following strategies best balances the need for improved efficiency with the strict adherence to West Virginia's traffic laws and licensing regulations? Option A. Reducing the time spent on each application by expediting the process through the elimination of certain verification steps, such as confirming the applicant's identity against official records or ensuring all necessary renewal requirements are met. Option B. Prioritizing applicant satisfaction by relaxing all renewal requirements to expedite service, even if it means bypassing standard checks and balances. Option C. Introducing a new, unapproved software system for processing renewals that promises faster processing times, without prior testing or validation against West Virginia DMV standards. Option D. Implementing procedural adjustments that ensure all required documentation is verified. Applicable tests are administered or re-verified according to established protocols, and renewals are accurately recorded in the state system, all while seeking ways to reduce processing time for each step. The correct answer is D. Implementing procedural adjustments that ensure all required documentation is verified. Applicable tests are administered or re-verified according to established protocols, and renewals are accurately recorded in the state system, all while seeking ways to reduce processing time for each step. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a need to optimize the process for handling driver's license renewal applications at the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles, DMV. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for speed and efficiency with the absolute necessity of adhering to West Virginia's traffic laws and licensing regulations to ensure public safety. Misinterpreting or circumventing established procedures, even with the goal of improving workflow, can lead to unqualified individuals obtaining licenses, thereby compromising road safety and violating statutory requirements. The best approach involves a thorough review of existing West Virginia DMV procedures for license renewal, identifying bottlenecks, and proposing modifications that enhance efficiency without compromising the integrity of the licensing process. This includes ensuring that all required documentation is verified. Vision and knowledge tests, where applicable for renewals based on specific circumstances outlined in West Virginia Code Section 17B2-1 et sec., are administered or re-verified according to established protocols, and that the renewal is properly recorded in the state system. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the efficiency study's findings while remaining firmly within the legal framework governing driver licensing in West Virginia, prioritizing public safety and regulatory compliance as mandated by state law, an approach that focuses solely on reducing the time spent on each application by skipping verification steps, such as confirming the applicant's identity against official records, or ensuring all necessary renewal requirements are met as per West Virginia Code Section 17B2-1, is professionally unacceptable. Its failure to adhere to established verification protocols directly violates the spirit and letter of West Virginia's licensing laws, which are designed to ensure only qualified individuals operate motor vehicles. Another unacceptable approach would be to implement a new, unapproved software system for processing renewals without rigorous testing and validation against West Virginia DMV standards. This bypasses the established regulatory approval process and could lead to data errors, security breaches, or noncompliance with state record-keeping requirements, potentially invalidating licenses issued through the system. Finally, an approach that prioritizes applicant satisfaction above all else, leading to the relaxation of all renewal requirements to expedite service, is also professionally flawed. While customer service is important, it cannot supersede the legal mandates for driver licensing in West Virginia, which are in place to protect all citizens. Professionals should employ a decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the governing regulations, West Virginia Code, DMV policies. Any proposed process optimization must be evaluated against these regulations for compliance. The next step is to assess the impact on public safety and the integrity of the licensing system. Finally, proposed changes should be piloted and reviewed by relevant authorities within the West Virginia DMV before full implementation to ensure they meet both efficiency goals and legal requirements. Question 18. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a West Virginia driver's license examiner is evaluating an applicant who is visibly nervous and makes a minor hesitation during a lane change, but otherwise demonstrates good control and awareness. The examiner is considering whether to overlook the hesitation to allow the applicant to complete the test, given their overall competent driving. Which approach best aligns with West Virginia's driver licensing requirements and professional ethics? Option A. Pass the applicant, overlooking the minor hesitation during the lane change, with the rationale that their overall competence suggests they will learn from any minor mistakes. Option B. Strictly adhere to the West Virginia Driver's Handbook and official testing procedures, evaluating the applicant's performance against each required maneuver, and making a decision based solely on whether all criteria are met. Option C. Allow the applicant to continue the test despite the hesitation, intending to discuss the importance of smooth lane changes later, as the applicant appears generally capable. Option D. Pass the applicant because their nervousness is understandable, and their driving, aside from the slight hesitation, indicates they are likely to become a safe driver with more experience. The correct answer is B. Strictly adhere to the West Virginia Driver's Handbook and official testing procedures, evaluating the applicant's performance against each required maneuver, and making a decision based solely on whether all criteria are met. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for a driver's license with the paramount importance of public safety and adherence to West Virginia's licensing regulations. A licensing examiner must exercise sound judgment to ensure that all applicants meet the required standards, even when faced with pressure or a desire to expedite the process. The integrity of the licensing system depends on consistent and fair application of the rules. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves meticulously following the established West Virginia Driver's Handbook and the official testing procedures. This means ensuring the applicant demonstrates proficiency in all required maneuvers, including proper lane changes, speed control, and observation, as outlined in the handbook. The examiner must remain objective and base their decision solely on the applicant's performance against these established criteria. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with West Virginia Code Section 17B2-1, which mandates that the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles shall prescribe and provide adequate means for the examination of applicants for operators and chauffeurs' licenses, and that such examinations shall be conducted in accordance with established standards to ensure safe operation of motor vehicles. Ethical considerations also demand impartiality and a commitment to public safety above all else. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves overlooking minor errors in the applicant's performance, such as a slightly hesitant lane change or a brief moment of not checking mirrors, with the justification that the applicant is otherwise competent. This is professionally unacceptable because it deviates from the established West Virginia testing standards, potentially compromising public safety by licensing drivers who may not consistently operate a vehicle safely. It undermines the integrity of the licensing process and violates the principle of consistent application of rules. Another incorrect approach is to pass the applicant because they appear nervous or anxious, assuming that their performance will improve with practice. This is ethically flawed and legally questionable. The test is designed to assess current driving ability, not potential future improvement. West Virginia's licensing regulations require a demonstration of competence at the time of the test. Failing to adhere to these standards can lead to unqualified individuals obtaining licenses, posing a risk to themselves and others on the road. A third incorrect approach is to allow the applicant to proceed with the test despite a clear and significant violation, such as failing to yield at an intersection, with the intention of discussing the error later. This is a direct contravention of West Virginia's traffic laws and licensing requirements. Such a violation indicates a fundamental lack of understanding or adherence to critical safety rules, and allowing the test to continue under these circumstances is negligent and endangers public safety. It also violates the explicit requirements for passing the driving test as outlined in the West Virginia Driver's Handbook. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established regulations and ethical principles. This involves a thorough understanding of the West Virginia Driver's Handbook and relevant statutes, When evaluating an applicant, the examiner must remain objective, focusing solely on observable performance against the defined criteria. Any deviation from these standards, regardless of perceived extenuating circumstances or pressure, must be addressed according to protocol. The primary responsibility is to ensure that only qualified individuals are licensed, thereby upholding public safety and the integrity of the licensing system. Question 19. Stakeholder feedback indicates that some applicants for a West Virginia driver's license have expressed confusion regarding the acceptability of certain supporting documents. A recent applicant presented a document that is widely recognized as a form of identification in their previous state of residence, but is not explicitly listed in the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles official guide for driver's license applicants. The applicant is eager to obtain their license and has provided what they believe to be sufficient proof. Considering the strict regulatory framework for driver's license issuance in West Virginia, which of the following actions best represents the legally compliant and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Meticulously review the applicant's submitted documents against the precise requirements outlined in the West Virginia Code of State Rules for driver's license issuance, verifying that all necessary forms are present and that supporting documents meet the specific criteria established by the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles. Option B. Accept the document as a valid form of identification because it is commonly used and appears legitimate, assuming it fulfills the spirit of the identification requirement. Option C. Inform the applicant that the document is not acceptable because it is not on the standard list, without further investigation into whether an alternative interpretation or a different acceptable document could satisfy the requirement. Option D. Expedite the application process by accepting the document, as it contains similar information to an accepted document, and address any potential discrepancies later if they arise. The correct answer is A. Meticulously review the applicant's submitted documents against the precise requirements outlined in the West Virginia Code of State Rules for driver's license issuance, verifying that all necessary forms are present and that supporting documents meet the specific criteria established by the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient processing of driver's license applications with the absolute imperative of adhering to West Virginia's specific legal requirements for documentation and verification. Misinterpreting or overlooking a single requirement can lead to the rejection of a valid application, causing frustration for the applicant and potentially delaying their ability to legally drive. Conversely, accepting insufficient documentation could lead to the issuance of licenses to individuals who do not meet the state's legal standards, posing a risk to public safety and undermining the integrity of the licensing system. Careful judgment is required to ensure both compliance and applicant satisfaction. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves meticulously reviewing the applicant's submitted documents against the precise requirements outlined in the West Virginia Code of State Rules, specifically those pertaining to driver's license issuance. This means verifying that all necessary forms are present, that the information provided is consistent, and that the supporting documents, such as proof of identity, residency, and legal presence, meet the specific criteria established by the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the legal mandate to ensure that only individuals who meet all statutory qualifications are issued a driver's license, thereby upholding the law and ensuring public safety. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves accepting a document that is commonly used for identification in other states, but is not explicitly listed or accepted by West Virginia's regulations for driver's license applications. This fails to comply with West Virginia's specific legal framework, potentially leading to the issuance of a license to someone who hasn't met the state's defined standards for identity verification. Another incorrect approach is to assume that a document is sufficient because it appears legitimate and contains similar information to an accepted document. This bypasses the critical step of verifying compliance with West Virginia's specific rules regarding the types of acceptable proof of residency or legal presence, risking the acceptance of inadequate documentation. A further incorrect approach is to expedite the process by overlooking a minor discrepancy in a required document, such as a slightly outdated address on a utility bill, without seeking clarification or alternative acceptable documentation, as per West Virginia's guidelines. This deviates from the strict adherence to regulations required for license issuance and could lead to compliance issues. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should adopt a systematic checklist approach, cross-referencing each piece of submitted documentation against the official West Virginia DMV requirements. When in doubt about the acceptability of a document or the interpretation of a rule, the professional decision-making process should involve consulting the official West Virginia Code of State Rules, seeking guidance from a supervisor, or contacting the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles directly for clarification. This ensures that decisions are based on accurate regulatory interpretation and uphold the integrity of the licensing process. Question 20. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a prospective student in West Virginia is inquiring about the total cost for a driver education package that includes 10 hours of instruction at a rate of $50 per hour, plus $25 for required course materials. The West Virginia state sales tax rate is 6%. What is the most accurate calculation of the total cost for this student? Option A. Calculate the total cost by summing the cost of instruction and material costs, and then applying the 6% West Virginia sales tax only to the material costs. Option B. Quote only the hourly rate multiplied by the hours of instruction, omitting material costs and sales tax. Option C. Calculate the total cost by summing the cost of instruction and material costs, and then applying the 6% West Virginia sales tax only to the hourly instruction cost. Option D. Calculate the total cost by summing the cost of instruction, hourly rate multiplied by hours, and material costs, then applying the 6% West Virginia sales tax to this subtotal. The correct answer is D. Calculate the total cost by summing the cost of instruction, hourly rate multiplied by hours, and material costs, then applying the 6% West Virginia sales tax to this subtotal. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a West Virginia licensed driver education instructor. The challenge lies in accurately calculating and communicating the total cost of driver education services to a prospective student, ensuring transparency and compliance with West Virginia's consumer protection laws and the specific regulations governing driver training schools. Misrepresenting costs can lead to student dissatisfaction, complaints to the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles, DMV, and potential penalties for the instructor and the school. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves calculating the total cost by summing the base hourly rate for instruction, the cost of any required materials, and applicable West Virginia sales tax. This approach is correct because it adheres to West Virginia Code Section 17B3-1 et sec, which governs driver training schools and mandates clear disclosure of all fees. Furthermore, it aligns with general principles of fair business practices and consumer protection, ensuring the student receives a complete and accurate understanding of their financial obligation. The calculation would be total cost equals hourly rate times hours of instruction, plus material costs plus total cost before tax times sales tax rate. For example, if the hourly rate is $50, 10 hours of instruction are needed, material costs are $25, and West Virginia sales tax is 6%. The calculation is total cost equals $50 times 10 plus $25 plus $500 plus $25 times 0.06 equals $500 plus $25 plus $525 times 0.06 equals $525 plus $31.50 equals $556.50. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to only quote the hourly rate for instruction without including the cost of materials or sales tax. This fails to provide a complete picture of the financial commitment, violating the principle of full disclosure required by West Virginia regulations for driver training schools. It misleads the student into believing the service is less expensive than it actually is. Another incorrect approach is to calculate the total cost by adding the hourly rate multiplied by the hours of instruction to the material costs, and then applying the sales tax only to the material costs. This is mathematically incorrect and results in an underestimation of the total cost, failing to comply with West Virginia's tax laws, which require sales tax to be applied to the total sale of goods and services. A third incorrect approach is to calculate the total cost by adding the hourly rate multiplied by the hours of instruction to the material costs, and then applying the sales tax only to the hourly instruction cost. This is also mathematically flawed and does not accurately reflect the total amount due, as sales tax should be applied to the sum of all taxable components of the service. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field must adopt a transparent and accurate pricing strategy. This involves understanding all cost components, including hourly rates, material fees, and applicable state taxes. A systematic approach to calculation, ensuring all elements are accounted for and taxes are applied correctly to the total taxable amount, is crucial. When communicating costs, it is best practice to provide a detailed breakdown, allowing the student to understand how the final price was determined. This builds trust and ensures compliance with regulatory requirements.